Hi, I'm Stan Lee, editor of the Marvel Comics group of superhero comic magazines. Comic books have been a big business for the past 25 years, and they're bigger than ever today.
How does a company so broke that it has to mortgage off the rights to all of its most popular characters transform itself and rapidly build the most successful movie franchise in history? The rise of Marvel Studios is more than just a change in fortune, it's the product of inspired ideas and calculated decisions. From a ragtag group of rogue producers to a movie studio that's become a genre in and of itself. Throughout 15 years and 33 films, there are moments of both triumph and failure. In this video, we'll be tracking everything from its unprecedented rise to the problems currently plaguing the studio. But the first step to understanding its story is answering the question, why does Marvel work?
We tried to make our characters have feet of clay. Now, poor Spider-Man. I mean, okay, he's pretty good at catching bad guys, but he's apt to get an allergy attack while he's fighting. He worries about dandruff. He'll have an ingrown toenail, tears his costume. His Aunt May won't let him go out to save the world because he's not wearing his galoshes and it's snowing out. And the funny thing is, I started doing that as a gag and really to keep myself awake, you know. And I found that the readers are as crazy as I am. They started enjoying this sort of thing.
Marvel Comics first found success in the 1960s by inventing a new kind of superhero. Characters like Batman and Superman over at DC were larger-than-life figures in fantastic worlds. You see, Gotham and Metropolis weren't real places. They were settings made up to reflect the stories being told. But Marvel took a significantly different approach, one that took the same kind of colorful characters but put them in real places with real problems.
A train. I've got to stop it.
The struggles of everyday people like Peter Parker told side by side with the adventures of Spider-Man inspired the kids that would become the next generation of storytellers. But the architect of the Marvel Cinematic Universe himself, Kevin Feige, was not one of those kids.
The people in this crowd will soon be among almost 40,000 who have seen a new science fiction movie at North Park Cinema 2. The movie is called Star Wars, and since it opened here 9 days ago, capacity crowds have filled the 1,100 seats in the theater almost daily.
Feige grew up obsessed with blockbusters like Star Wars and Indiana Jones. He had a passing knowledge of comic books, but he wasn't a super fan by any means. A superhero work he did love, however, was Richard Donner's Superman. This iconic movie had a tagline so incredible that it captures the magic of what film at its best can be. You'll believe a man can fly. This is a phrase that would come to define Feige's approach to filmmaking in more ways than one. When it was time to go to college, he applied to the University of Southern California, the alma mater of his hero George Lucas. Although he was admitted to the school, he wasn't accepted to its film program. This future titan of the film industry applied 4 more times and was denied at each and every turn. He had been a student there for years and still didn't have a major. His family even encouraged him to start looking into other fields of study, but that wasn't what he wanted. On his 6th and final application, he was finally accepted. Feige's persistence and do-everything work ethic has been instrumental to not only his own success, but Marvel Studios as a whole. Now that he was officially a film student, Kevin got an internship with Lauren Shuler Donner, a successful film producer and the wife of Superman director Richard Donner.
I was in attendance at USC Film School, and they had postings for internships. And a lot of my friends were getting internships, and I thought, and they were working for people I'd never heard of or businesses I'd never heard of, and I thought, you know, I'll work for free, but it would be great to do it for somebody you know or respect. And I walked in and saw Donner, Shuler Donner Productions. Richard Donner, of course, did Superman, Lethal Weapon, Goonies, and I just the room got dark and a spotlight was on that, and I literally tore the number off and sent in my resume. It was, to this day, it's the only resume I ever put together and filled out. It was for that internship right over there.
This would be the foot in the door that Feige needed. As an intern, he did everything from walk dogs to grab coffee, and his hard work paid off because eventually he was offered a job as a personal assistant. If given the choice prior to his internship, Feige would have opted to work for Richard Donner, as he had always dreamt of being a director. This quickly changed, however, when he noticed how much busier and fast-paced Schuler Donner's days were when compared to her husband's. As her personal assistant, Feige studied her every move and learned the ways of the film industry. When Schuler Donner started working on Fox's X-Men movies, her personal assistant became a bigger and bigger part of every meeting. Feige took it upon himself to learn everything there was to know about Marvel's mutant team, to the point where people thought he had been a superfan for years. Part of the reason the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been so successful is its great casting. Feige demonstrated his early talent for it by advocating for the casting of Australian song and dance man Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
It was funny when I met the first table of meetings I had with these people came on set from the science fiction magazines who write all about Marvel and da-da-da. They came on this whole table and I sat down and there was silence. And I said, hello, and they went, they're all looking at me. And I said, so I play Wolverine. I said, we know. We just can't quite believe we're meeting Wolverine. You're Wolverine. I'm like, yeah. No, but you're Wolverine. I was like, so anyway.
Director Bryan Singer, who has since been disgraced for a variety of valid reasons, had a rule prohibiting comic books from the set so that actors wouldn't feel the need to adhere to the source material. Feige, however, disagreed with this and would sneak comics onto the set and give them to actors seeking further insight on the characters they were portraying. Comic books often walk the line between fantastic and ridiculous, and many people in the film industry were afraid that staying too close to the source material had the potential to make the movies look silly. Kevin Feige had a different philosophy. He saw the importance of embracing the source material and committing to what made it work. Yeah, it might look silly, but you have to try to make it look cool.
Who am I? I'm Spider-Man.
Marvel had sold off the rights to all of its most popular characters to keep itself afloat. They managed to keep the merchandising rights, however, which allowed them to profit off of the films being made about their characters by other studios. This approach was favored by executives like Avi Arad and CEO Ike Perlmutter, who had both gotten involved with Marvel through the toy industry.
Captain America and the Champions of Freedom, Spider-Man and Wolverine.
Arad felt that Marvel could comfortably make a profit off of merchandise without actually having to put up any of their own money. This business model worked. Sony's original Spider-Man movie succeeded beyond belief and paid off the rest of Marvel's debt. In fact, Spider-Man and X-Men were so successful that they created a superhero movie boom. Suddenly, studios were making movies about characters like Daredevil and the Fantastic Four. Marvel was making good money, but ambitious newcomer David Maisel thought they should be making even more.
Well, we all made a big decision 5 years ago, a huge decision for the company to create our own studio rather than licensing. And the task to execute that came upon Kevin and I. And Kevin has worked at every movie that Marvel's put together. And the two of us created a studio team and made Iron Man and Hulk.
In their current business model, Marvel was missing out on a large part of the profit made from their own IP. They also had no creative control over how their characters were being used. Maisel argued that by having their own film studio, Marvel could make toy-friendly movies that would bring in even more money. Perlmutter was intrigued by the proposition, but Arad was vehemently against it. The Marvel CEO decided to bet on Maisel, and history would show he made the right decision. Maisel pitched banks for over a year and failed to secure any financing. When he finally managed to make a deal with Merrill Lynch in 2005, Marvel had to put up the few remaining character rights they had as collateral. Perlmutter had sold off the rights to all of the most popular characters, so the newly christened Marvel Studios only had B and C-list characters to work with. This independent film studio with obscure intellectual property would change the landscape of the film industry forever, but this outcome was far from certain. When toying with the idea of starting their cinematic universe with a Captain America movie, executives wondered if this goofy red, white, and blue guy with wings on his head could actually make any money at the box office. Iron Man had near zero name recognition among the general public, so he wasn't exactly the obvious choice to kickstart a franchise with, but there was one factor that made him the perfect candidate: toys.
Power is in your hands. Invincible Iron Man comes complete with Iron Man's awesome gear. Removable helmet, electronic sounds.
I am Iron Man.
Repulsor gauntlet, light pack.
Upon hearing more about the character, focus groups of children quickly put this future box office staple at the top of their list of most wanted toys. Now the building blocks of the MCU were starting to come together. Avi Arad hired Feige after the success of the first X-Men movie because he was impressed by his focus among the chaotic set. This intern turned film producer had secured the job that would define his career. Now he can make his own blockbuster films like the ones he had loved so much growing up. Feige succeeded in this position because he understood why Marvel works better than almost anyone else. While we know how this story ends, I want to emphasize just how massive of a gamble this was and how much Marvel was risking in that moment.
With the new studio setup, the way things work now, is there more of an opportunity for a crossover here and there with Marvel characters in a movie? So say somebody might show up in a Hulk movie down the road.
I think if you listen to the characters I named that we are working on currently, and you put them all together, there's no coincidence that may someday equal the Avengers. I think just having that possibility on the horizon is something that excites all of us.
The use of grounded characters is not only what allowed Marvel to tell compelling stories through comics, it's what enabled their transformation into a cinematic juggernaut. This approach is how Marvel struck gold with the single most important decision they ever made, the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man.
I had just been hired to cast in the first Iron Man. Jon Favreau was on board at that time, and I remember asking him in a meeting with everyone, tell me all the qualities that you think are most important. Fast, quick-witted, and funny, and dynamic, and a bit troubled, and confident, and brilliant, and all of these things. And we really kept coming back to Downey.
I am Iron Man.
On paper, Tony Stark is a fundamentally unlikable character. He is a cocky billionaire who inherited his fortune through weapons manufacturing. Created by Stan Lee in the context of the Cold War and Vietnam, a time where sympathy for war profiteers was at an all-time low, the comic book legend wanted to create a character that everybody should hate but would ultimately fall in love with.
Then I decided I would try a tough one. All the kids, there was some war going on at this time, either Korea or Vietnam, I can't remember, but everybody was against the war. I made up a guy named Iron Man who was sort of like Howard Hughes. He was an inventor, an industrialist. He made munitions, all the things the kids hate. But I said, I'm going to make the kids like him. And apparently they did. Iron Man was a very successful strip, and they're making a movie of him now.
We know Robert Downey Jr. today as one of the highest paid leading men in Hollywood history, but we need to remember what the public perception of him was like before his time at Marvel. He may have been a talented performer with an Oscar nomination, but he was also box office poison with a troubled personal life and substance abuse issues holding back his career. These factors caused studio executives to be hesitant to cast Downey as the linchpin of their burgeoning franchise. Feige's vision for the MCU was one that emphasized character moments over action sequences and created a perfect blend of the two. To this day, Marvel seeks out interesting directors who succeeded in smaller films as they can bring some of that energy over to the cinematic giant. But the first of these directors was Jon Favreau. Coming from a background of character-oriented stories, he saw the potential in Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and soon became his biggest advocate. You see, Favreau didn't want RDJ in spite of his reputation, he wanted him because of it. Downey's very public struggles and the hard work that it would take to overcome them mirrored the redemption arc that Tony Stark himself would have to face. His audition tape was fantastic, and it showed that he was everything the team had been looking for.
They got Iron Man so right with Robert Downey Jr. I mean, he was born to play Tony Stark.
Favreau and Feige fought for him, but the studio remained hesitant. A well-timed leak from an anonymous source came out that revealed Downey was in talks for the role. The overwhelming positive reaction from the fans would give the studio the reassurance they needed to close the deal. The anonymous source in question turned out to be no other than Favreau himself. Robert Downey Jr. embodied the character. He gave a masterclass performance of a man whose humorous facade masked the insecurity and vulnerability underneath. In many ways, this was the role he was born to play, but they still needed to shoot the thing.
Robert's a guy who is very disciplined in his approach to everything he does, and he's really gotten his body and his mind into a very, sort of clear, disciplined state, and that that sort of carried over into how he prepared for the role.
Marvel in those days ran like a Silicon Valley startup. This movie that would kick off the biggest franchise of all time was an independent film with an unproven leading man. Since Downey was still known as a box office dud, legendary actor Jeff Bridges was brought on to draw more people in. Reflecting on his time working on the movie, Bridges described it as a $200 million student film. There was no solid script during pre-production. Sets were being built and torn down as the first days on set were getting closer and closer. As a veteran actor, Bridges was uncomfortable with this type of workplace. He liked to have a script he could study for months in advance, and with Iron Man, he didn't know what the script was going to be on any given day. The team was actively writing and rewriting scenes at the same time that they were being recorded.
We would often come to work, and there would be no script for that scene today, and we would muster in my trailer with Favreau and Robert Downey and the suits, man, the guys from Marvel.
Right.
And we would sit in there, and I would say, okay, Robert, you play me, and I'll play your guy. So we would change parts. Favreau would be calling writer friends of his. He said, here's the scene. Now, you got any ideas?
Goodness.
Meanwhile, the crew's in there tapping their foot, ready to go to work.
How can this be?
And
That's
I was
incredible.
I was, such stress until I made a little adjustment in my soul or whatever, saying, Jeff, will you please relax? You are making a $200 million student film.
Yeah.
Just fucking relax, have fun.
Stop thinking of it as a $200 million film. Think of it as a student film, and then you'll be okay.
And who you get to play with, and Favreau and Downey.
Downey was okay with this process?
Well, I don't know about okay. He surfed the big wave just so beautifully.
He's amazing.
He's a master actor. He's a master improviser, as is Favreau.
Right.
So when we made that we just jammed and had fun, and great stuff bubbled up out of it. And Favreau, what was so great about him, he was able, as the director, you can imagine the pressure and,
Sure.
But he was able to keep this thing cooking with the suits in the room with us, the Marvel guys saying, I don't think, Ironmonger would say that,
Right.
Favreau was able to not just go, get out, and blow it. He was just, surfing the whole thing so beautifully.
Despite the chaos, Robert Downey Jr. flourished in this environment. He was a great improviser, and a lot of the most memorable lines from the first film were Downey's own doing.
Please, no gang signs. No, throw it up, I'm kidding. Yeah, peace. I love peace. I'll be out of a job with peace.
It's impossible to separate the original Iron Man film from the context of the War on Terror.
We will not falter, and we will not fail. Peace and freedom will prevail.
In a lot of ways, the September 11th attacks created a new appetite for black and white stories of good and evil that would be met with countless tales of daring heroes taking the law into their own hands. But Iron Man was different. He was a character who had been forged in war. This unlikable yet somehow lovable weapons manufacturer from the Vietnam era. By bringing the character to the modern day, complete with modern day conflicts, Marvel gave itself a lot of difficult questions they needed to get sorted out. Stan Lee's original thesis for the character needed to work out once again, but this time on a much bigger scale. The reason why this aspect of Iron Man works in the 2008 film is that Iron Man sees the error of his ways and changes. While in the Middle East, Tony Stark is wounded by a weapon of his own creation, reflecting the way the United States had meddled in the region for decades. I bring up Marvel's handling of the Middle East and Iron Man because I really want to emphasize their ability to put their characters in real-world situations as one of the main reasons they've succeeded. This, along with the improvisation of the first Iron Man film, have remained tried and true parts of the Marvel formula.
My favorite thing to do is to work on a scene or a sequence or a challenge in that cutting room of how to tell a story, how to get an intention that we wanted across, and it not working for some reason, and being able to solve it is fun, and screening it again and have it work, and then showing it to audiences, and they would never guess in a million years that there was a problem with whatever particular sequence this was.
This flexibility has allowed their films to be living, breathing entities, but this has caused difficulties since the cinematic universe has increased in scale. If you decide to change a sequence months into post-production, this gives visual effects artists a very short window of time to make adjustments. Given the sheer amount of content that Marvel has been putting out as of late, the dip in quality should be unsurprising. There are still great products that shine through, like last year's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and it seems like Marvel is scaling things back this year and focusing more on quality control. Marvel is a complex machine, and the solution to their problems won't be an easy one. This video barely even scratches the surface of the Marvel story, but my intention for it was always to examine the dawn of their empire and how their unique approach got them started. What do you think sets Marvel apart, and what can they do to keep that going? Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, comment, or subscribing to the channel down below. I've been having some camera issues, as you can probably tell by the lack of my face in this video, but I'm working on getting that resolved. I really wanted to get this video out sooner rather than later because I love Marvel and I can't believe I hadn't made a video about them yet, but here it is. I think it came out pretty good, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. I just want to say I appreciate every single one of you guys, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.